It was a dusty little town on the edge of nowhere, the kind where gossip traveled faster than the tumbleweeds that rolled across the wide open street. And in that place, a girl named Clara lived with the weight of more than just her body on her shoulders. She carried the pain of rejection, the sting of being laughed at, the loneliness of being unwanted, and the crushing truth that her own family had decided she wasn't worth keeping because she wasn't like the other Slim. But instead of being seen as beautiful or blessed, she had been judged, mocked. To her family, she was a burden. Too big, too loud, too different. And the only way they thought they could rid themselves of that burden was to exchange her for a few coins and supplies. Clara didn't cry when her father signed her away. She stood tall, her dark hair pinned back, her wide brown eyes staring at the ground, her lips pressed in a thin line. If they didn't want her, then she wouldn't beg. She would walk away with her pride intact. The merchant's caravan rolled out that very evening, but fate had other plans, and fate wore dusty boots, a weather-beaten hat, and a heart that had been searching for something or someone it didn't even know it was missing. Building a life with his own hands. He had seen plenty of cruelty in his life, knew the look of defeat in people's eyes. He felt a fire rise up in his chest. He leaned against the post by the saloon, watching the scene unfold, and something inside him said. And in that moment, Caleb stepped forward. His spurs clicked against the wooden boards as he walked, his gaze never leaving her face. The merchant turned, annoyed, ready to shoo away another meddler. But Caleb's hand rested casually near his holster, and that alone was enough to make any man pause. "What's the matter, cowboy?" the merchant sneered. "You looking to buy something?" Caleb looked at Clara, then really looked at the way she tried to hide her trembling hands, the way her strength radiated even in her pain. He didn't see a burden. He didn't see something to be traded. "I reckon I am." Clara's breath caught, her eyes darting up to his, wide with disbelief. She had never had a man look at her like that, like she mattered, like she was worth something. The merchant laughed. "She's too big for most men to bother with. Eats too much. Takes up too much space." "You really want her?" Caleb's jaw tightened, but instead of anger, his touch was steady, firm, and warm. And as he set her on the ground, he leaned close enough for only her to hear, and whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. No one had ever said anything like that to her before, and yet here was this stranger, a rugged cowboy with kind eyes, telling her she was exactly right. The merchant grumbled. "She's coming with me," he said, and that was the end of it. "Name's Caleb. I've got a ranch not too far from here. Ain't much, but it's honest work." "You hungry?" Clara blinked, and then unexpectedly laughed. But for kindness, for dignity, for someone to see her as enough. "Yes," she said softly, but slowly, words began to fill the silence. Caleb asked about her favorite meals to cook, and she found herself smiling as she described warm bread. He listened, really listened, and every time she glanced at him, soaking up her every word, she hesitated, then placed her hand in his, and he held it firmly, steadying her as she stepped down. For the first time in her life, Clara felt safe. Laughed with Caleb over simple things. And sometimes, late at night, they would sit on the porch in the quiet, stars scattered across the sky, and he would tell her stories of his past. Instead, he reminded her every day. One evening, after they had finished their supper, Caleb leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on her. "Maybe God made you the way you are, because you were meant to be strong enough for a different life. But this time, they weren't from pain." "Do you really mean that?" she whispered. Caleb's thumb brushed against her knuckles. "I've never meant anything more." In that moment, the cowboy who picked her up, not because she was a burden, but because she belonged in his arms. She knew she had finally found a home. Life on the ranch moved with the rhythm of the land's sunrises painted in gold. Who had once believed she was nothing more than an unwanted shadow in her family's story, began to discover herself in this new chapter, never once making her feel like a burden. She found herself waking up each morning with something she had never truly felt before: hope. but hope is fragile, and the world is often cruel to those who try to rise above the labels others have forced upon them. And though her heart raced with nerves, she walked proudly at his side. How could a man like him want a woman like that? A group of young men laughed behind their hands, throwing glances at Clara as though she were some kind of joke. Clara's throat tightened, shame rising in her chest, and for a moment, she wanted to turn back, to run, to hide the way she always had before. But Caleb noticed, and without hesitation, "You walk beside me, not behind me. Don't you ever forget that." The town grew quiet, the laughter dying in the throats of those who had mocked her. A warning and a vow. Clara's eyes burned with tears, but she stood straighter, holding his arm, and for the first time in public, she felt proud of who she was. Still, the encounter left a mark on her, a reminder that love couldn't erase the cruelty of the world. What if one day you realize they're right? That I'm not what a man like you deserves. And then he did something unexpected. He took her hand, placed it over his chest, and let her feel the strong, steady beat of his heart. "You think I see your size? I see your strength. I see the way you care. I see the woman who makes this house feel like home. You're not too much, and you'll never be not enough. You're just right, always have been, always will be." Clara swallowed hard, her tears finally spilling over. She realized she was slowly learning to believe him. Weeks turned to months, and Clara blossomed. She planted a garden by the ranch house, filled with wildflowers and herbs. Caleb's heart felt fuller than he had ever thought possible. She cooked meals that filled the ranch with warmth, and sometimes Caleb would come in from the fields, just to watch her, hum to herself, while she stirred a pot, her face glowing in the firelight. She dreamed of her father's disapproving frown, her mother's cold silence, her siblings' mocking laughter, and sometimes she would wake up in the middle of the night, shaking, whispering, "Why wasn't I enough for them?" Caleb would hold her close until the trembling stopped, of putting obstacles in its path to prove its strength. His face weathered, his expression hard, and now, perhaps driven by regret or greed, he came to see for himself. Clara froze when she saw memories flooding back, her body stiff with old wounds. "Clara," her father said, dismounting, his arm brushing against hers, his presence like a shield. "She has a home," Caleb said evenly. "Right here." Her father's eyes narrowed. "You don't know what you've taken in. She eats more than she's worth. Always been a burden. That's why we sold her." Clara flinched at the words, the old sting cutting deep. But before she could speak, Caleb stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare call her a burden in my presence. This woman works harder than any man I've ridden with. She's strong, she's kind, and she's worth more than any coin you could ever put in your pocket." Her father sneered. "You'll regret it, Cowboy." But Caleb's jaw tightened, his hand brushing against his holster, and the older man backed down, mounting his horse again. As he rode off, Caleb knelt beside her, wrapping his arms around her. "You don't belong to him anymore," he whispered. "You never did." Her eyes wide, her heart pounding, and for the first time, she truly believed she had been saved, not discarded. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "I'll always be yours." From that day on, something changed inside her, and the man who had seen her as enough when no one else did. And as Caleb pulled her into his arms beneath the wide, endless sky, Clara knew that no matter what came,